going on. It's the balance test, been there for many years. It's the vitamin D test, and it's the diabetes test. And I guess you all been to the doctor taking a blood sample, and you know that this is the way it's happening, you know, a big needle into your arm, multiple drops of blood into these tubes, 5, 10 mils, times 10, 5, 10, almost a bucket of blood, right? Well, you guys, when you use the Cincino test, you know, there is no big needles, it's just one drop of blood. And it's a big difference, but this is really all it takes, you know. And this blood, when it comes onto your arm, it's red, right? But if you wait a couple of hours, this will happen. The red blood cells, being heavy, they will sink to the bottom, and above, the yellow blood plasma will appear. And this yellow blood plasma is what your doctor usually would use for analysis. In like 99% of all tests is performed on this yellow blood plasma. But these red blood cells, they are also quite interesting, you know, they look like this, like donuts. And they are born in your bone marrow, in the core of your bone. And, you know, every second, 2 million cells are born. Think about it, 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million. It's pretty fascinating. And at the same time, some have to die, of course. And when they are born, they live for 120 days. Recognize this number? Yeah. So these cells, they have a membrane like all other cells, and this membrane is constructed by phospholipids. And these phospholipids, they look like this. They have fatty acids connected to them. And these fatty acids, they can be different types, you know, like DHA, EPA, saturated, unsaturated, and so on. And you know, the balance oil contains hundreds, maybe thousands of different lipids, which can be analyzed like a lipidomic technique like this. And these complex lipids, like phospholipids and triglycerides, they contain fatty acids. And these are the fatty acids, the main fatty acids in the balance oil, in the fish part of the balance oil. You can see we have a lot of DHA, EPA, and oleic acid. And then in the olive oil fraction, these fatty acids are the most prominent ones, in addition to the polyphenols, which is in there and is really important for the stability of the balance oil. You know, if you have like, so I said that these membranes are constructed from lipids containing fatty acids, you know. So if you only have 2 types of fatty acids, you can like simple structures, you know, simple membranes with less functionality, like this tower of Lego. If you have a lot of different fatty acids, different building blocks, different Lego blocks, you know, you can make complex structures with complex functionality, which is important for the membrane fluidity and also the channels in the membrane. So it's very important to have all the building blocks available when you build the membrane. So you see on this slide, if you have only saturated fatty acids, you will only have this simple structure, tight, no openings, you know, less fluidity. If you have different types, like the polyunsaturated fatty acids, you can have these complex structures with added functionality. So what happens then when you swallow the balance oil? Well, you swallow about 15 grams of fat. It goes into your stomach. It dissolves. The different building blocks go into your blood. And your blood goes into your heart. And your heart will pump these building blocks throughout your body to the different organs, to your bones, to your brain, to your liver, and so on. And DHA, omega-3, is really important for the brain. Did you know that the human brain is about 1.4 kilos? It's a lot, you know, and 50% of this is fat, 700 grams of fat. And 30% of this fat is polyunsaturated fatty acids. And 90% of this is DHA. So for me, it's pretty obvious that DHA is quite important for the brain, right? So what we really need to test is if we have enough DHA in the brain. So we could take a sample, open up, take a sample, right? With a spoon. I guess we don't have any volunteers in the room for this. Then it's pretty handy that the same blood feeding the brain is also feeding the bones, right? And we know that every second 2 million cells are born in your bones. And the membrane in these cells are constructed from lipids that you have in your blood that very second, which is the result of what you've been eating, right? So if you didn't take any supplements or balanced oil, you have a lot of old cells with low omega-3 in the membrane. But when you do start to take the balanced oil, you will have newly born ones with high omega-3. And if you continue to do this every day, you will have more and more new ones replacing the old ones. Yes?
Yes.
So this will happen. The concentration in the blood will start to increase. And since it takes 120 days to replace all cells, this is the time when it flattens out. Understand?
Yes.
While in the yellow fraction that your doctor would use, there is no cells, right? So you will have no increase over time. You'll only have the spiking from your daily dose. So it's about 6 hours from you take the oil to you reach maximum in your plasma fraction. So by using this sample type, you will learn nothing else than what you had for dinner yesterday, and you already know, right? But if you include these red blood cells, you will have a 120 days history of what you've been eating. So this is the key for the balance test, and this is the difference between the doctor sample, the doctor test, it will do the analysis, and this Encino test. Okay? So, for the balance test, we do fatty acid analysis using chromatography. So we pick out 11 of the major fatty acids listed here, and the most important ones are the ones in red brackets. It's the omega-6, arachidonic acids, and it's the EPA and DHA. And this is the result from the analysis, is what we call the chromatogram. You see these blue peaks? They represent the different fatty acids. And a high peak means a high concentration, and a low peak means a low concentration. And when we are to look at the omega-6-3 ratio, we actually look at the difference in size between this peak, arachidonic acids, omega-6, and this peak, EPA. And you can see that this peak is about 5 times the height of EPA. So in this case, the ratio is 5 to 1. So it's really that simple, you know, and this is what we call a relative analysis. It's like a percentage. So the omega-6 peak is about 500% to the EPA peak, relative, right? And this is so important for the Encino test, you know, because when you do home sampling of blood samples, it can look like this. Sometimes you get a lot of blood, and sometimes very little blood. So if you use A and B sample with a lot of blood, you will have high peaks, right? Because there's a lot of blood. And if you use this sample with very little blood, you have really small peaks. But look at the ratio. It's always the same. Because these peaks, they go up and down in the same manner, you know? High peaks with a lot of blood, small peaks with little blood, with always 3 to 1, or another ratio. And of course, this is very handy, because I don't care how the sample look, you know? So you can send like massive amounts of blood or very little blood, but you will have the same result anyway. And this makes the service very robust and very, very well suited for this kind of service that Encino offers globally. Look at these samples. I really push the quality here. I have excess blood. I have multiple drops on top of each other. And I have smearing of blood. I even have a carbonyl blood. You see these blue bars, they represent DHA, and you can see the result is almost the same, no matter what. Except the card with no blood. So please send blood, right? Yeah, of course, this is because there is no DHA on the paper, right? But look at this one. No blood, high result. How come? So this is not DHA, it's C16, it's a saturated fatty acid. It's very common. You will find it in any type of fat, like butter, hand cream. So what do you think happened here? Someone, me, touched the paper with my fingers without washing my hands, right? So if you feel your fingers, you can feel they are quite greasy, you know? So the concentration of lipids are much higher than in your blood. So just by slightly touching the paper, you will ruin the analysis. So no hand cream. And what do we do to remove fat? We use soap, right? So, soap, warm water, rinse well to get them off, and dry off with a paper, and then you're good to go. And then this analysis works really, really good. So, the next topic is the vitamin D test. And this is a test you can do at the doctors as well, and the results should be totally comparable. And when we validate a test, we actually need to know what is the purpose of the test or the purpose of the service to make sure it's fit for purpose, right? So we need to design tests that will reveal if the test is good enough for the purpose. So what is the purpose of the vitamin D test? I would say the purpose is to find if you're in the low red region here, you're deficient in vitamin D, you need to take more supplements or start taking supplements. And then to see if you are in the high red range, having toxic levels of vitamin D, because this can also happen. And then you have to stop taking supplements, right? So this is the main purpose. And then of course people would like to know if they are at 50 or 100 and you want to reach maybe, I don't know, 130, 140, something like this. This is the purpose of the test. What is not the purpose of the test is to establish if your concentration is 55.5 or 55.8, right? Because it doesn't really matter. Or if you're like 20 or 21, because you're deficient anyway, right? Or if you're 200, 400, 600. So it's less accurate up here and mostly accurate down here. This is the design of the test, right? You understand? Yeah. Okay, so the samples are collected in the same way as the balance test, but in this case, it's not a relative analysis, it's an absolute analysis. The concentration is nanograms per mil or similar. And in this case, we need high quality samples, not like this. So this is what you send. This is what we want. So you need to improve. Look at this, huh? It's a bleeder, huh? Axe, probably an axe, you know? So the perfect sample, how is the perfect sample collected? Well, you prick the lower side of your finger, you stand up, you have the paper on the table, and you squeeze like this, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait, until you have a big drop hanging from your finger, right? And you lower your finger to the paper, not the finger, just the drop of blood, and it will fill the circle like magic. That's the way to do it. Okay? Then we feed these samples into the machines, the robotic systems. We have a camera that scans the barcode into the database. It also will find the blood on the card, because sometimes you don't put the blood in the middle of the circle, but on the side, even on the card box, you know. So this camera system will locate the blood, will punch a few pieces of papers into these small glass vials with blood on. We will add some liquid chemicals, we will heat, shake, and do the chemistry. And then we will do the final analysis with chromatography like this. So this is mass spectrometry, very advanced type of analysis. These are two systems. Each system is about 400,000 pounds each. And these systems can take 1,600 samples per day altogether. So the assay performance, for this we use something called quality control samples. These are dry blood spots made from the same blood. So we buy like 20 liters at the blood bank at the hospital, not from the same person, but from like 20, 40 persons. We mix them in a bottle and make sure they are evenly mixed, and then we make these tens of thousands of dry blood spots. And every time we do analysis for you, we use this to monitor the precision, for instance. So we have your samples here, and then before and after we have the quality control samples. And since they are identical, they should produce almost the same result every time. Yeah? So we can use this as a tool, and you can see each of these dots here, they are one measurement, one sample. They are not identical, but they are very similar. But most importantly, we don't see any trends going up, trends going down. Or we're also looking for extremes like this one here. See that? So when we see something like this, we need to go through the calculations and see if we can find anything wrong. And if you do find anything wrong, we can correct this and then we can release the results. If we don't, we need to do the whole batch once more. And this is why we need the second sample, the B circle, right? So you need to send 2 samples. Most of the time we don't use it, but sometimes we need it to do reanalysis. Then maybe most importantly, accuracy. How correct is the sample, the result? And we have kind of secured the correctness between the reference type of plasma sample that your doctor would use for this analysis and the dry blood spots. And you can see this correlation plot shows that there is great similarity. A result of 100 in plasma will also give 100 in DBS. We also participate in something called quality assurance programs, round robin test. This is actually a UK university that will, in London actually, that makes 1,000 identical samples like we do for the control samples. They send it to all the labs in the world, and there is more than 1,000 labs participating in this program. The labs use their method, their people, their machines to produce a result. They send it back to the coordinator, and then they compile a report. And we get this report and we can see if our result, how it's compared to all the others, and the average of all the others, and the true value that the coordinator has assigned to the sample. And if you are within the criteria, you get this diploma that you are fit for purpose, you know. And we've been a part of this program since 2015, and we have been compliant every time. Another important thing when you send samples through the mail is stability. And these are studies that we do on stability. You can see 3 people over 21 days at 25 degrees and 50 degrees Celsius. And you can see there is hardly no change over time in these 21 days. Okay, so this brings me into the final part of my speech, and this is about the diabetes test. So how many of you had COVID? Hands up. 50–60%, yeah? So this was a pandemic, right? It was spreading like a fire all over the world. But you know, there was another pandemic before the COVID pandemic, and this is the diabetes pandemic. And 540 million people in the world with diabetes, and about 16% in the last 2 years. 2 out of 10 in most countries have diabetes these days, and in some Pacific islands, 50% of the population have diabetes. And the reason for this is lack of control with your blood sugar. So when you eat sugar and carbohydrates, your blood sugar will go up and your body will secrete insulin, and the insulin will move the sugar from the blood into the cells for storage for later usage. If something is wrong with this system, your blood sugar will stay high for some time, and your heart will pump the blood with high sugar to the different organs in your body, like your brain and your eyes. And in your eyes, this sugar can react with the lens of your eye. And this is one of the main causes of a disease called cataract, which you probably heard of. And 80% of all dogs actually die blind because of this disease, diabetes. And the issues they have with the gum is also related to diabetes. So this is a really bad disease. And as for the brain, we cannot take a sample from the brain, right? We cannot take a sample from the eye. And then again, it's pretty handy that these red blood cells, they also react with the sugar. So the red color of the cells react with glucose and forms glycated hemoglobin, HbA1c. So by taking a few cells from the fingertip, we can study how sugar is reacting with other parts of your body. And this is very, very convenient. And if you're below 38 millimoles per mole, you are per definition healthy, at least when it comes to diabetes. And if you are between 38 and 48, you are pre-diabetic. And if you're above 48, you are, by definition, diabetic in the Western world. The good thing is that 100% of all type 2 diabetes can be reversed by dieting or lifestyle changes. And this is one of the reasons why I work with Cincino. Because, you know, I mean, business-wise, it's a no-brainer, right? It's good business. But there is another reason for me, and this is related to the fact that, you know, you've seen that we publish in really high impact journals with the best, you know, Harvard, King's College, Cambridge, and so on, and that we work with really, really important things like premature babies, cancer vaccines, and so on. But my problem is that most people don't read these scientific papers, you know.